Two-way tables, day 2. Our learning target for today is I can calculate missing data in a two-way table. 286 students were asked whether they play a sport or a musical instrument. Some of the results are shown in the two-way table. So today, our practice is going to be on how to find the missing values. So in these two-way tables, we're going to be filling in the rest of the empty squares. So let's take a look at this table. We have playing sports in this column, people who don't play sports, people who play an instrument in this row, people who do not play an instrument in this row. Our grand total of 286, we know that there's 118 students that are people that play a sport because they're in this column. So in 286, we're totally surveyed. So this means 168 of the total students do not play sports. And how do we figure that out? So we're trying to figure out this missing box for totals. If we knew 118 of the students play sports, and we know there was 286 that were totally surveyed, we subtract these and we get 168. So let's continue on. Let's take a look at this column, play sports. So we know that there are 118 students that play sports. Of those 118, 64 also play an instrument. So we subtract these, 118 minus 64, and we get 54. Let's keep working our way through. Let's look at this row. So we know it does not play an instrument. Well, how many total does not play an instrument? So we can add 54 and 93. So 54 don't play an instrument but do play sports. 93 don't play an instrument but they also don't play a sport. We add those together and we get 147 for our total of students who do not play an instrument. Let's look at this total row. So if we knew 286 students were surveyed, we know that of those 286, of those 286, 147 of them did not play an instrument. So what is left? We subtract 286 minus 147, and we get 139. These two totals added together need to equal this. These two totals added together need to equal 286 as well. And then lastly, let's look at this row of plays an instrument. We know that there were 139 students who actually play an instrument. Of those 139, 64 of them play sports. So we find the difference between the two to find out how many don't play sports but play an instrument. So when we subtract them, we get 75. So wasn't that fun? It's just like doing a little puzzle. Find somewhere to start and keep working until all the missing pieces are filled in. So let's have you try one. So why don't you pause the video here, give it a try. I'm going to read it first and then give it a try, and then we'll go over the answers. So how many 7th grade students have traveled on an airplane? So 352 students were surveyed about whether or not they've ever traveled on an airplane. Some of the results are shown in the table. So let's take a look. Let's briefly look here. So 352 students were surveyed. That's what this number represents. And the rest of the numbers are going to be depending on what column and what row they're in. So why don't you pause the video, try to fill in those missing 5 boxes. All right, let's start. So what we're going to do, let's try to do this column. We're looking at, being that we know the number of students that have traveled on an airplane is 274. Of those 274, 184 of them are 8th graders. So to find how many 7th graders there were, we're going to subtract these two numbers. And when we subtract those, we're going to get 90. So 274 minus 184 will equal 90. All right, so let's move on to, let's do this one. So 7th grade students, how many total 7th grade students traveled on an airplane? Or, I'm sorry, 7th grade students were surveyed? Were 152. 152. So to find out how we did that, we added 90 plus 62, because 90 students traveled on an airplane, 62 did not travel on an airplane. So we add those together, so we get 152 total surveys that were completed that were 7th graders. Okay, let's move on to this square. How many totals? So if we know there was a total of 352 surveys completed school-wide, 7th and 8th grade combined. Of those 352, 152 of those were 7th graders. So we're going to find the difference. So that means we're going to subtract these two. So 352 minus 152 is 200. Let's look at this square. So how many, there were a total of 200 8th graders surveyed. Of those 200, 184 of them travel on an airplane. So we subtract those and we get 16. And lastly, there's a couple different ways we can do this one. We can, looking at how many have not traveled on an airplane, we could add 62 and 16. That's one way to get this. The other way we could do this is going across here. So if we knew that there were 352 total surveys completed, of those 352, 274 rode on an airplane, traveled on an airplane, so we could subtract those. So 352 minus 274, and we're going to get the same exact answer as 78. So either add these two to get 78, or you could subtract these two to get 78. So there's multiple ways you could have done this. You didn't have to go in the same order as I did, but you just keep working around until you can have it complete. So that's it for today. So we want you to head on over to Schoology for your practice. If you do have any questions, feel free to email your teachers.